Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to toy-polloi. Now in front of me here we have the Action Man helicopter pilot and the turbocopter. Now this figure I recently traded to get into my collection because it's a figure I had as a child and an outfit that I absolutely love. But both the outfit and the turbocopter need a little bit of work to bring them back into sort of running and displayable order, and the figure itself is missing the hands, which is a common issue which I've showed you how to fix before, and you can very easily buy replacement hands online. So the first thing to do is to take a look at what needs fixing. Now the outfit itself actually looks in quite nice condition, but it does have a few problems, which is mainly the seams have come undone, as you can see here, and on this side someone has already tried to re-sew the seams, but they've done a pretty poor job. You can see the stitching on the well, it's just coming through there, so I want to try and remove as much of this sort of prior repair as possible and then re-stitch it so that it looks a lot neater. So that's a fairly straightforward job, a little bit of a boring job, but it needs doing. Now on the helmet it should have a visor, which I do have the visor here, but the visor is held on by some very tiny little pegs that come out of these two side sort of parts of the gold trim of the visor and hook into these holes. Now more often than not these are snapped off, so we're going to look at a way of replacing those with some new pegs to hold that in place, and then that should work quite nicely, because without the visor this helmet doesn't look particularly interesting. So we're going to work out how to fix that. And then on the turbocopter was donated to me as a part of a big lot of Action Man stuff that I was recently sent, and it is in actually remarkably good condition. The mechanism works. Now if it didn't work, I have no idea how to get into this because it's a fully sealed unit, so it's quite lucky that works, but the straps are in a bit of a sorry state. As you can see here, they're all coming off, so we're going to look at replacing those and fixing that up. So first thing to do, fix the outfit. Now I've turned the outfit inside out because this is the easiest way for sewing this back together. You can see on this side this whole seam on this arm has come apart, so we're just going to re-sew that. That's fairly straightforward. But on this side someone has already had a go at sewing it using black cotton and really not done a very good job at all. So I've been into Mrs. Toy-Polloi's sewing box, and she has this very useful device for removing stitches. It's quite a sharp point with a blade sort of in the little crook of it there, and you can go through and gently sort of cut through all of these stitches, and we can remove the ones that someone else has had a go at fixing. It's a pretty dull job. It's going to take a while because there's quite a lot of this stitching in place, and I'm just going to gently unpick it all, and then I will re-sew it but a little bit neater. And also I'm not going to use black cotton, I will use blue cotton, as you can see here, so that it matches the outfit and won't show up if there are any sort of stitches sticking through. So this is going to take a little while to unpick all of this, but it will be worth it in the end because the outfit will look a whole lot better. So here you can see all of these stitches that I have removed, and actually if we now look at the outfit, it's falling apart quite a lot because there's an awful lot of repairs going on there under the arms and along the arms. So it's just a case of re-sewing that, and I think I can sew that a lot better than it was done beforehand. And again, because it will be done in blue cotton, you won't be able to see the join. It's just been sort of a bit of a rough repair there. Now a lot of people would say that it's probably not worth it on an outfit like this because it's a fairly easy jumpsuit to find, but really it's worth saving all of these things, and for sort of half an hour to an hour's work I'm pretty happy to do that. So let's get on with sewing and we'll put this back together. Now some people have asked where I learnt to sew, and I have to say I was taught by my mother, and also I learnt at school. I was at a school that turned from a boys only school to a mixed school a couple of years before I joined it, and so part of the new curriculum was home economics and sewing, and I spent quite a few lessons at school learning to sew, and I have to say it's been a very useful skill to learn because it's enabled me to fix toys into my adulthood. It took me about half an hour to do all the sewing on this jumpsuit, and as you can see the seams are now a lot better. You can hardly tell that these have been re-sewn. Even the one on the back is all of this had been sort of badly sewn beforehand, and all of the underside of this sleeve and all down this side. So I'm really quite pleased with how this has come out. It certainly looks a lot better, and it's well worth the half hour it took me to do all of those sort of little bits and fixes. So we can get this back on the figure, and then we'll start fixing the next part of this outfit, which is the helmet. For the broken visor tabs, I'm going to use my favourite replacement part, which is bits of Lego, and here we have a Lego aerial. Now these are the long sort of bendy aerials that start off at the standard sort of thickness tube and go down to a 2mm tube. Well, it's not even a tube, it's just a 2mm rod, and it's nice and flexible stuff, as you can see here. So what I'm hoping to do is to drill a very small 2mm hole just in the end of this bit of the visor where the tab originally would be, and then I'm going to glue in a very small piece. So this is an aerial I've already cut the end of, a very small piece of that just in the drilled hole, and then that should, if we look at the original helmet, should fit in there quite nicely. So the hardest part of this is actually going to be to drill a small hole in both sides of this visor without damaging it. I may just carefully score that a little bit with a penknife just to make sure there's a little pilot hole, and then very carefully drill in there and see what happens. I've never done this before, so it could work, it could not work. Let's try it and we'll see what happens. Because this is going to be a very small piece of plastic to work with, I'm actually going to glue in a much larger piece and trim it down once it's in place. So I'm just going to carefully drop a small little bit of super glue in that hole, like so, and then I'm going to push through from the outside the piece of Lego until I'm happy with the sort of position, which is about there. And then I'll let that dry, and then I'll trim off the excess, and we can see how well that's worked. And here we have the visor fitted. As you can see, you can just about see the little bits of grey Lego on the side there. I could paint those gold, but to be honest, it's so small I don't think it's worth it. You can see the same on the other side. And the visor fits in place, and we can swing it up and swing it down. So that seems to be a pretty good fix. It's a little bit fiddly to do. The drilling of the holes is fairly awkward just because you're so close to the end of these sort of little bands on either side, but you can do it, as you can see. So let's fit this onto the figure and see how it looks, because he's pretty much done. He's got his outfit back and he's got his helmet all finished, so it's next onto the turbocopter. As you can see, the figure is looking pretty good now. The helmet is all finished and the visor back in place. The outfit all looks really good, and I've attached some of the 40th anniversary reproduction hands just to finish him off. So let's move on to taking a look at the turbocopter. We can now look into fixing the little bits that are broken on the turbocopter. As you can see here, I have the turbocopter. The actual mechanism of this works really quite nicely. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a little bit of paint missing on these handles, which I may just leave because it's such a minor detail. But the main problem is actually the straps that hold this onto the figure have come loose. Now there are two versions of this turbocopter, one with plastic straps, and the earlier version has elastic straps, as you can see here. And there is this section that sort of goes onto the front of the figure, which the straps are originally sewn in place. If we look here, you can see that they're sewn onto the top part of this little sort of connecting piece, and then they would have been sewn onto the tabs on the top of the turbocopter, but at some point that sewing has snapped or come undone, and someone has tied a knot in the elastic so that's sort of holds it in place, but as you can see, it actually pulls out quite easily. So we've got to replace this elastic. I was hoping that I could actually untie these knots, but they're so tightly tied that's not going to be possible. So quick search online, and I've managed to buy some pretty good elastic as a replacement. Now this stuff is 5mm flat elastic, and you can buy it in metre lengths from quite a few sellers on eBay, so I've bought a metre's worth of it. I'm just going to carefully sew on some bits onto these two areas, and then again sew the top bit loop onto the turbocopter, and then that fixing should work quite nicely. So let's go ahead and get that done. So to make sure this matches properly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to snip off one of these little bits of elastic, just like so, and I will sew on one end. I've just cut a small bit of the new elastic here. I'll sew on one end and get that in position, and I can use the other bit as a guide as to how long this should be before I sew that end onto the main section of the turbocopter. So simple bit of sewing again, just going to fold over the bit of elastic like that, and I have a needle with some black cotton on it here. I'm just going to carefully sew these two bits together much like they would have originally been done, and we'll get that attached. So here's the first new bit of elastic sewn in place. Now we can use this other side, as I say, to work out roughly how long the elastic needs to be, and we're going to thread this through. Now it needs to come through the sort of top section like so, and then we can lift this bit over the top and have it sort of hanging down. You want it to be this way round, so that that faces forwards, because that's obviously the bit that's going to be on the front of the Action Man. And then really I'm just going to sort of roughly work out how long that needs to be. Obviously as it's elastic it's going to have a little bit of give to it, so I'm going to say about that long. And again I can just sew that in place, and then we'll trim off the excess elastic and then attach the other sides as well. I've now sewn both bits in place, and we've got a little bit of excess elastic here which I'm just going to trim off with a pair of scissors. There's no point in leaving it too long, it just gets in the way. I'm also going to, while I'm doing this, tidy up the bits of elastic that are original still at the bottom. As you can see here, the ends have been left quite long, so I think I'm just going to trim those down just to make them a little bit shorter and a bit neater, like so. So we can now put this back onto the Action Man helicopter pilot, and we'll see how he looks with the turbocopter all finished and ready to run. And here we have Action Man all ready to fly. As you can see, the outfit's looking really nice. The turbocopter now fits back on his body, all of the attachments work, and if I press the button on the side you can see that the blades spin round really nicely. So I'm really pleased with how this has come out. It's a lot of work, but mainly just because there's lots of little fiddly bits to do. Nothing was particularly complicated on it. It's a lot of sewing on the outfit. The visor, because of the little tabs being broken on it, that was a little bit more work than normal, but it's still a fairly easy fix to do. You just need to be quite patient and quite careful with the drilling and a little bit of Lego, and that can be sorted. So as you can see, that's another outfit all saved and ready to go back on display here at toy-polloi. So I hope this has all been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.